Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, especially around the world, it is nonstop, and we are going to continue to bring you really important voices. The last couple have been great with Wes Moore and Bob Kerrey, and we've got more coming up, and we've got another really important, impactful leader that sits at the intersection of politics, national security, veterans affairs, culture, tattoos, and more for his fourth returning visit. The returning champion, the great and powerful Adam Kinzinger. Congressman Adam Kinzinger is back. Welcome back, sir.
Hey, buddy, good to be with you. It's been a while, and nothing's really happened since then. So hopefully we can find some things to talk about.
It's been a while. You
Yeah.
haven't been with me in a while, but we continue to be out there, kind of crossing in midair. And I got to start by thanking you for your leadership and your courage and your candor. But
Look, man, this is just what people should be doing, right? Like, thanks for saying thanks, but like, man, what blows me away daily is just that more people don't. It's just like, I mean, why the hell else would you do this job? You know what I mean?
Well, more Republicans in particular, and I want to get to that because we haven't talked about that in a while. But before I do, I want to talk about everything from Hegseth to Ukraine to your tattoos. But before I do, let me ask you, man, you're in the middle of all this, and you've been pretty open about the fact that you're in the crosshairs of a lot of hate and vitriol, and you've got a family and a young one. How are you, and where are you? Don't tell me exactly where you are. I mean, I'm going to put undisclosed location under everybody for now. But where
Look,
are you, and how are you, man?
I live in Texas now, and which is interesting. Kind of accidentally happened, but I like it here. I don't know how long we'll stay here, but here for now. But look, how am I? I guess fine. I mean, family's great, life is good, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if you're somebody like you and I, and probably most people listening or watching, you actually care about the country. It's a good thing, and it's a curse in a way. And right now, it's the curse because you just, every day you wake up, there's something new that happened, and it makes your blood boil, and it makes you more motivated, and there's a point at which you do ask yourself, like, how many more tours in Vietnam do I have to do? But I'll tell you this much, I've got at least one more tour in me because, what I'm seeing happen to this country is just, it's wrong. And, so we're going to fight. But I'm doing all right generally. And, I always say to anybody that wants to, talk about throwing me in Gitmo or whatever, like, you're going to have to make up charges. Bring it. That'll make me 3 times more effective against you. I welcome it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, it would be a big party in Gitmo, and there'd be a lot of us. But the conversation would be good, and it would be a really powerful group of people who have been. The comparison about battle tours is really good because I think especially for you when you're running for Congress, you've got kind of every year feels like a combat rotation. I used to say when I ran IAVA, it was like 15-year deployment. It was just you're in a cycle and it never stops. But you're also living in that world where your mind is kind of split. Like I'm at a basketball game last night with my kids, and the White House is shutting down the press. So your mind has to almost, like in combat, you kind of have to compartmentalize a little bit. But you also, Adam, part of what I think you're really important is because you get the culture in a way that a lot of Democrats don't. And you and I have both been critical of the Democrats and the Republicans. But I think in this moment, people are looking for leaders who talk straight, who seem real. We had Wes Moore on last week. I think he's one of the rare Democrats that can do that. We had Bob Kerrey on, who was like known for doing that his whole career. But you're a guy who does that too. So before we went live, you said, "Hey, can we talk about my tattoo?" Because there's another
I just
guy
mentioned I had a tattoo.
Well, there's another guy with some tattoos that's now running the Pentagon that you and I know pretty well, probably better than most. And I want to talk about him. But part of him is the image. Right? The image, and that's a lot of this, the image of him, the image of Tulsi, the image of Kristi Noem. But you're a guy who's got, a down-to-earth image. Can you show us the tattoo for the people on YouTube and tell us what's the tattoo, man?
I've had it for a while. It's just my pilot wings. So I made a decision, I said, if you ever go to war, you have to get a tattoo. And so I got this. It'd been a while actually. Yeah, I didn't do it right away, but I think 2011 is when I got it. So there you go. I'm starting to get the old man fade a little bit, but it's still pretty sharp. So I may have to touch it up. The only difference is I'm supposed to have a wreath now around the star because, of how many years I've flown, but I don't have that. Probably won't get it. It'll look a little awkward, little new ink blended with the old one.
Well, you've also got a little one now. So like,
Yeah,
you didn't have a little one when you were in Congress. And I know for me, I mean, in a no shit kind of way. Like I worry about my kids being around me. They don't come with me to CNN. They don't come with, like, it's almost like I go into a mindset where being, especially in the national media now, is kind of putting a target on your back. But how's being a dad, man? I mean, we talked about it last time, but I do think it really grounds you in this kind of work, especially, right? So how's being
Yeah.
a, and you come home off of TV and then you go and probably do bottles and bedtime, right?
Yeah, it's great. Look, it's he's 3 now, and he's like now like yesterday. Actually, it's funny because my wife went and did something, so I'm watching him during nap time. Of course, he didn't go to sleep because why would he when the wife was gone? And so he's screaming, and I go in there to try to help him, and he's just literally picking up his legs and kicking me as hard as he can. He didn't want dad; he wanted mom, and I am told that's going to last for a few more years. It's fine. But look, it's great, because I first off, I have no clue, Paul, how anybody with a young kid can do Congress. I have no clue, and thank God I didn't have a young kid in
Yep.
Congress because I don't know, how you do it. Some people do, good on them. I couldn't, and so yeah, I'm a little older, a little more tired than I probably could have been, if I'd have done this 15, 20 years ago. But the reality is, it's great. It reminds you of why you're doing what you're doing. It is, it's to torture this kind of combat tour thing. The question, and this is what constantly goes through my head now that I have a kid. If I was single and this is what I was doing, it's fine. But it's like, the guys that did 1 tour in Vietnam, we consider them heroic. Guys that did 2 tours, heroic. 3 tours, heroic. The rare person that did 4. How many tours is enough, right? How many tours when you can finally say, look, the country's not saved, but I'm done. And that's what I struggle with is like, for me, I never want to give up on it. And I'm not right now, let's be clear. But that's the thing you have to start going through your head on is like, it's not just me anymore. I now have a wife and kid with me. And, but I'll tell you, the thing I think that really actually fires me up more than anything is I refuse to be intimidated. Now, maybe that's dumb. And maybe in the long term, that's not smart, but I will not be intimidated, particularly by these people that pretend like they're tough guys. I mean, they really pretend. Look, you can't be an alpha male and sit here and put Donald Trump all over your X profile and talk about how amazing this fatso is, who really has never done a thing that's manly in his entire life, and then tell me that you're an alpha male with that. And that's where I'm sitting here looking, go, look, as men, and I'm kind of all over the place in this answer, but as men, we have to redefine masculinity to America's young men about what masculinity is. And
Yes.
unfortunately, they're not seeing the right example of that.
No, I think this is really a very, very important conversation. And we didn't get into it enough with Wes Moore last week, but he presented a part of his state budget and agenda and strategy with a focus on young men and boys. We've had Scott
Mm-hmm.
Galloway on this show talking about what is really a crisis for young men and boys, and especially in a political environment where they can be radicalized more easily, right? I mean, you and I know, serving in the Middle East, the most dangerous thing is a young, pissed off man with a gun. Right.
Yep.
And we're kind of building a generation of them in America. And Trump has captured a lot of them with this kind of faux next generation. It's like cosplay masculinity. It's a generation of people who are following Hegseth, but most of them didn't serve. And they played
Mm-hmm.
paintball and Call of Duty. And I think this reclaiming of masculinity and also portraying a positive example of what a male leader looks like, and especially male white male leaders, right? So we can contrast for the rest of the country these guys who are almost all white and almost all male. I think it's a really, really important discussion, and I think it's a big part of why the Democrats lost. So
I do too.
let me ask you to dig into that, because you talk about a lot of things. Your Substack is growing, which is really important. But there's a piece that everybody's missing, Adam, that I think you might be able to help me work through. I think the war deployments construct is a good one, but I think a better one may be the anti-war movement, because we're waiting for our John Kerry, our Bobby Mueller. It's not going to be Chuck Schumer. It's not going to be someone in Congress. It's going to be this new generation of I've said, a new generation of Colonel Vindmans. Maybe it's somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
fired from the Pentagon or a former FBI agent. These new leaders are going to rise, and the country is starving for that, but they're also starving for a defense strategy. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem like anyone has articulated what we do. It's clear that Trump has a plan, Project 2025 and the rest of them, and they are rolling. They're invading the country. They are taking everything over. In your view, what is the strategy to stop them? And or
Well,
who is putting forward a strategy that America can rally behind?
Who's putting forward a strategy? Nobody. Let's just be honest, nobody. And look, the Democrats lost young men, huge, huge. And I'll be critical to the Harris campaign. They spent their whole time going after women, right? Like, yeah, Liz Cheney's great, but it's Harris and Liz Cheney up there. Like, sorry, you guys are winning women. You need to go after men. So they have a poor strategy to take this back. The Democrats sit there and it reminds me of, so I started running in 2009, shortly after Obama was elected. And I remember talking to these Republican leaders in the House saying, I'm going to run. And they were just beat down. They were saying, like, okay, come back. I don't know what's going to happen. That's what the Democrats are right now. They're shell shocked. They're beat down. There was an Onion article that says, House Democratic leaders standing really still, hoping nobody notices them. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it is. And so it's not going to be the Democratic Party. Now, that doesn't mean the Democratic Party isn't the alternative. It is in this environment. But they don't know how to do this. And so it's going to take folks like you, folks like me, disaffected Republicans, and people who haven't been in the system to come in and say, I'm willing to offend not just Republicans, but Democrats as well. Because this movement is not going to be, and I think we're going to see this year kind of a new Tea Party, honestly,
Mhm.
but not
Yep.
necessarily based on ideology, but anti, and what's the issue? It's going to be anti the richest among us controlling us. Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, with the most powerful person in the world, thinking they know what's best for us. And we honestly know they don't care what's best for us. They care what's best for them. That's going to be what rises from here. It's going to start with pushing back at town halls. If your member's not having a town hall, demand they have a town hall. If they don't have a town hall, say they're hiding from you. It's going to be that kind of stuff until we get to an election in 2 years and then ultimately in 4 years. But look, I know it's frustrating to people because they want to do something right now. That's one thing you can do is demand that for your representative.
Yeah, I mean, Hakeem Jeffries says, I really don't know what to do. He said it out in the open, right? I'm trying to find the power, is what he said. I mean, the Democratic strategy seemed to be elect Kamala Harris. That was the
Yeah.
strategy, right? And then when they lost, they're shattered. And now you've even got James Carville, who I usually think is right, says the Democratic strategy should be play possum and do nothing, which
Yeah.
is like the most glaring example of how wrong this all is, in my view, because they're taking over everything. And they want you to say, you know what, go hide in the bathroom and let them take over the rest of the house. And then maybe they'll tire themselves out and you can reemerge all of a sudden from the bathroom and remove them from the house.
Right.
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 But I think there's also a danger in what Trump is doing, which the parallel I look for is the de-Baathification after Saddam in Iraq, because the purged can be the opposition. Right. There's all these senior leaders at the Pentagon, senior leaders at the FBI, really smart government servants who've been nonpartisan their whole life. So if a CQ Brown plants his flag tomorrow and says, hey, guys, we are now the opposition, we are going to defend our democracy, defend our Constitution, I think people are starved for that right now. Outside of politics, do you see anybody? There are people like Mark Cuban, right? I mean, Richard Branson, there's the anti-billionaires, right? But is there anybody that you see that's not a politician? Because I really think that's important. I use CQ Brown as maybe an example. Milley, everybody wanted Milley to be more political, but he's kind of gone to ground. Is there anybody you see or you follow that you would trust to lead us forward on this?
I wish, man. I really wish. I can't think of it. Like I said, you mentioned Cuban. I think he's doing a good job. He's said he's not going to run. That's fine. He can be a thought leader in this process because, for somebody like him, he's got an ability to go on. I hate to talk about the Rogan thing, but he has the ability to go on Rogan, right,
Yep.
and do that. And that's what we're going to need a lot more of. Look, the military guys, like, I don't understand the silence from them. The Mattises, right? CQ. Well, CQ's just out, so we'll see. Milley, etc. It's like they're fearful of something. And look, if you think that the current generals, man, I hope so. But if you think it's guaranteed that the current generals and civilian leadership in the Pentagon is going to disobey a bad order, that's a lot more faith than I have right now. I think it's much more likely that this purge that has happened of the Jags, of CQ Brown, of everybody else is more about sending a message, which is this is Donald Trump's military, and you will do what Donald Trump wants, and that's a worry to me. So No, I look outside of politics. I've not seen that person rise up. I'm not sure if they will outside of politics because people that aren't in politics are scared to death of getting involved in politics right now. When, as you and I are recording this, I mean, it was Jeff Bezos announced that he's going to limit the opinion page on the Washington Post
Yep.
to free market and whatever the hell else, liberty, which is exactly what Donald Trump wants. This obeying in advance is like it's terrifying, but it should motivate us. It should motivate us to say, and this has been my message in the last week, particularly, which is, guys, it's still our country. Like, this is still our country. So just because they have the power, it's not guaranteed forever. Let's take this country back.
I think if you polled Americans and said, give us 10 leaders who are a part of the opposition to the Trump agenda, I think your name would probably come up in the top 10. I think some of the other folks you mentioned would as well. And I want to go deeper on the Pentagon and Hegseth and Tulsi because we know them. You've worked alongside them or you've been around them. But this deepening, I called it the deepening and consolidating of the Trump propaganda machine, where the Pentagon is the example, right? Everything that Hegseth is doing, from banning books to pushing out the press to getting rid of trans people to redoing communication so he only talks to camera. Like, this is the proof of concept that they're going to cascade across the rest of the government. And what we're looking for is a counter narrative, right? And there doesn't seem to be anybody putting forward a counter narrative. But I got to come back to there's no Republican forming any kind of counter narrative. So every time you come on the show, I'm going to ask you, why the fuck are you still a Republican?
That's a good question. Well, I think it's important, and I don't know if I'm going to stay this forever.
That's what you tell me every time you come on.
Yeah, I know. But like the issue is this is if I all of a sudden say, look, I'm a Democrat now, then all of a sudden, what is your,
I'm not advocating for that.
Or independent, even so, it's being a Republican it sends two messages. Number one, I'm not the one that changed. And I mean, I think this is very clear. It's the party that changed. And the other thing, it really pisses them off that I still call myself a Republican, but it also gives me a credibility that, like, whether it's in media, on podcast, or in writing, that I wouldn't have if I left the party. But that said, I mean, I'm telling you, it's not going to last like this forever. There's a moment at which I have to make that decision, but it hasn't come yet because right now,
a lot of you guys, I asked Michael Steele this question every time he comes on too, and it was like, well, we'll see if they nominate Trump. Well, they see if they elect Trump.
No,
I mean,
I've never said that.
No, but I'm
No,
saying others
I've
have
never
said that, right? Others have said that. But at this point, that might also be bringing you down, right? They're trading on your name. You're kind of carrying the baggage of this fucked up brand, and even you saying you're a Republican gives the Republican Party some degree of legitimacy. So is there an opportunity? And I'm going to keep asking you and other for you, Liz Cheney, Michael Steele. Is it Republican 2.0? Is it Republican light? Is it new Republicans? Whatever the fuck you guys call it. But for those of you that sit where you are, and a lot of them were at the conference that you were part of, the First Principles Conference, what was it called? I'm sorry,
Principles First, yeah.
Principles First Conference, right? It was a lot of disaffected Republicans, moderate Republicans, a lot of the bulwark people, but there doesn't seem to be an organization of them, right? They're all doing they're all doing their TV shows.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is an organization, Principles First part of it. I have Country First. There's all these different organizations. I mean, the idea that you're going to get a bunch of strong personalities together and say, you guys all need to row in the exact same direction and unite behind one person, it's never happened in history, and it's difficult to happen. Usually that unifying figure has to rise out of that. But back on the Republican thing, first off, they're negative trading on my name more than anything, probably. But secondly, my 12 years in Congress was as a Republican. So, when I talk about my time in Congress or the job, I was a Republican in doing that. So, but look, I also think, again, it's if you stand back and you try to put out a blueprint and author, like, here's how the opposition is going to come out and win, it never happens like that. It always is organic. The big key, though, and this is important, it's a good lesson you learned from Venezuela, for instance, is the opposition can't fight among itself. Because when it fights among itself, it will never win again. And that's going to be the key. And so that's where it's awkward, is you're putting Republicans or former Republicans like me with independents like you, with Democrats, and saying, you guys have to get along and not fight among yourself. So far, it's been okay, but that's what's got to hold, I think.
But we've also got to win elections. And
We do.
that's part of the problem here is that I keep saying the Democrats are not going to save you. You can't count on the Republicans anymore. They continue to go deeper. You know, we ran 11 candidates this past year. We're going to run at least 25 for IVA this year. Dan Osborne, I keep saying, what a great example he was. Yeah, he lost by 6 points, but if he won, he's the no vote on Hegseth. He's the no vote on all of this. And, $70 million or so in the Dan Osborne campaign. He was not the best, but he was the best we had, right? And I wonder if we're like one or two people away, right? One or two Democrats or Republicans just breaking away, and probably someone who's in a district where a Democrat can't win. And it could be a Mark Cuban or someone else. This is fucking, I'm running for governor of Texas. I'm running for a high profile race, and then others will follow. So I just want to encourage you to keep in mind, they're waiting for you, right? I think they're waiting for you and other people to break, because I do think we're close to a dam breaking. And it doesn't have to be any party affiliation. It can just be a united group of people who are against Trump. When we were in Iraq, I remember one of my translators said to me, we were never united at all except against Saddam. And then we were totally ununited until you got here. Now we're united against you. But we are all united against Trump, and that might be enough, right?
It might be. And here's the thing that we have to break, though, and you're as well aware of this as anything. We've been programmed to believe every issue has two sides, and we've been programmed to believe that to be a member of a party, you have to have an opinion that agrees on all the issues. That's actually a relatively new phenomenon, that like the GOP agrees on issues and the Democrats agree on issues. Used to be there were all kinds of debates in the party. And secondly, take the issue of abortion. There is not two sides to abortion. There's about 100 different sides to abortion. And the problem is, if you have an independent candidate running and they say, okay, independent, that's great, you're centrist, what's your opinion on abortion? Well, I'm generally pro-life. And then all the pro-choicers go, oh my God, I cannot vote for anybody that's pro-life. And then, or if it's a pro-choicer, all the pro-lifers, oh my God, I could never vote for somebody that's pro-choice. And we retreat to our corners. That's the mindset we have to break.
Yeah.
And we may be getting to that point, but
I think we are, because let's use it as an example, right? You might not love Dan Osborne, but he wasn't going to vote for Hegseth. He's not going to overturn abortion rights. He's not going to vote yes for Tulsi Gabbard. He's not going to vote yes for Kash Patel. And I think especially Democrats and moderates are giving up on the Democratic purity test, right? And the practical reality of what we're facing is so much bigger than that. I keep coming back to what I think Wes mentioned in our last episode. People are looking for leaders. And if they trust an authentic, no shit, truly patriotic leader, they'll follow you, even if they don't love your abortion position or your gun position, right? And I think we're going to keep being really hungry for those people until somebody plants a flag and says, I'm going to use first and follow me.
Let me use an example I use because we're military guys, and I use this a lot, and it makes sense of this. So if we're all in a trench, right? We're in a trench in Ukraine, and we have an enemy that's 5 meters away and 25 meters away. And you probably would tell all your men too, everybody focus everything on the 5 meter target. Ignore the 25 meter target. 5 meter. The 5 meter target right now is the threat to democracy. That is what we all have to focus on. The 25 meter target is the convenient target that we can focus on if we take care of the 5 meter guy. The 25 meter target is we disagree on whatever the friggin' issues are. That, by the way, is called democracy. And that means we've saved democracy if we're agreeing again. All our fire has to be focused on that 5 meter target. Now, the question, though, is like, how does somebody, quote unquote, rise up to lead a movement? And keep in mind, that's something I debate myself all the time. Like, okay, do I want to help lead something like this? And what does that look like? You don't just declare yourself the leader of something. How do you do that? And that's where I think over the next few months, maybe even the next year, that comes to place, as long as we're thinking consciously about it and we wait for the right moments to strike.
So let's focus on what I think is the 5 meter target. And I think Trump made the lead element, which is Hegseth and the Department of Defense. He knew if he could get Hegseth through, everything would be easy. If you seize the power at the Pentagon, everything else is easy. And I don't think, especially Democrats, fully appreciate how he made Hegseth the tip of the spear to control the Pentagon. Now he's going to make the Pentagon the tip of the spear for his entire cultural agenda, right? And the model on everything from how they privatize to how they hire to the messaging, even just to the meanness. But I'm watching, and I've covered this a lot, how Doug Collins at VA is now a mirror image of Hegseth. It's just, and then it will be FBI, and then education, transportation, all that shit will be easy. But can you talk about, from your view, Hegseth in particular, because he is the leader of this freight train, and we need leaders who can kind of go in the UFC octagon against him. And you're one of them. We've seen Ambassador Bolton. You've seen I don't know who else. Like, I'm pressed here, right, to find other people who are standing opposite Hegseth. But there's an example of where a 5-meter target is pushing down on us. And what is your latest take on how to slow him down and how to focus on that juggernaut that's now picking up steam, it seems, at the Pentagon, rolling into Ukraine and rolling all around the globe?
Here's the thing that's really tough about the Pentagon when you think of it is, and we always know that no matter how bad things get, I knew sitting on the in the House at January 6th that if shit really hit the fan, at least the military would come in. That's always the break in case of emergency backstop. When you take that backstop away, there is nothing, right? You always knew, okay, if a president disobeyed the Supreme Court, there's escalating things, and eventually maybe the military removes him. If the military isn't there anymore, it creates a real fear. So what's the answer? I mean, look, here's where I think the key is going to be. The courts still work for now, and it is such a close majority in the House and really in the Senate too, that there's important leverage points, and we have to think creatively. So, you take somebody like Don Bacon and Brian Fitzpatrick, who I think are about to jump out of their skin, right? They've got to be pressured and encouraged to say, this may be your last term in office. And as a guy that had a last term in office, let me tell you, it's a blessing to be done with Congress. You don't know it at the time until you actually take that leap. But we've got to pressure them to say, okay, it's time to break ranks. Literally, it's one thing to say, I don't want to impeach Trump, which I think was wrong to not vote to impeach Trump, but regardless, but now your country is riding on the line. And I think there are leverage points in some of those that they can come out now, Don Bacon, for instance, and say, I'm voting against everything that the Speaker of the House wants until we fix this problem. And if they never fix this problem, I'll never vote for anything. And by the way, the legislative agenda, which is already going to be stalled, would be stalled even more. So is there much you can do in terms of you can't take a position in the Pentagon illegally, but what you can do is create this pressure outside politically on the folks that can. And that's our best bet right now until 2 years from now and then until 4 years from now.
Bacon's a good example. The other thing I've been encouraging the Democrats to do is to find legislative ways to tie him up. If Joe Biden had run for a second term, been reelected, the first thing the Republicans would have do is dropped articles of impeachment.
Totally.
Right? And now the Democrats, don't want to play the same way the Republicans do. There's also, you were in Congress when Senator Coburn was there. They used to call him Dr. No. He would put an anonymous hold on everything, right? Just to slow it. He held the Clay Hunt suicide bill. He held the 9/11 bill. There's nobody in the Democratic side that's willing to be the Dr. No. And in contrast, half of them voted for a radical like Doug Collins to be VA secretary. So is there anybody in the Democratic Senate that you think, or the Republican Senate, that you think is a focal point that people should put their pressure on? There's a Mitch McConnell voted no on Hegseth, right? Cassidy and others have been on the fence. Is there someone or some group of people in particular in the Senate that you think people listening should focus on to move?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the usual suspects. It's Bill Cassidy. It's Todd Young. Huge disappointments to me, by the way, both of them. Huge disappointments. Especially Bill Cassidy, who voted to remove Donald Trump. I considered him a personal friend and a hero. He's no hero because he wasn't in an election year. The time you put him in an election year, he's unwilling to take tough votes. So the 10 of us that voted to impeach were much more courageous than Cassidy, because he knew, I have 4 years of my term left. F him. So him, Todd Young, Murkowski, Collins, those people. Tom Tillis, I don't even understand. He always plays this game like he's some friggin' moderate, and he's the reason Kash Patel got through. He forced him through, basically. So, but those are the key. The senators who either you don't hear much from because they're trying to stay low key, or who you do know better. That's where you put enough pressure on them. Keep in mind, when all this Tea Party stuff started in 2009, it was because the Democrats were doing healthcare. Chuck Grassley was supporting the healthcare bill, and then went to a town hall meeting, was confronted at the town hall meeting, and changed his position at that town hall meeting. That sparked the Tea Party. So forcing these people to do town hall meetings, confronting them there as a member of Congress that was confronted, by the way, in those, it is the most uncomfortable and terrible thing you have to go through, and actually does make a difference.
Is Ukraine the place to create that cleavage? Because the thing that people haven't been talking enough about is all this disruption, all these leadership purges are making us more vulnerable to attack. Right.
Yeah,
and I think
completely.
put that line on. Now we put the whole world against us. We look like the bad guys. But is Lindsey Graham, who's been right on Ukraine? They're unlikely people. Democrats don't want to say anything nice about Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham, but this is a political war, and you got to get any ally you can. So is Lindsey Graham and Bacon and people like that on Ukraine the spot where the break starts to happen?
I think so. I think Ukraine is the issue, because if you see, even in the last few weeks, you know, Mark Levin, some of these kind of right-wing media, you even see it occasionally on, you know, state media, Fox News. They occasionally will be like, I don't understand what's happening, or they'll ask the Republicans, well, don't you I mean, do you really think Russia's not the invader here? And by the way, every time you ask somebody if Russia invaded Ukraine and they don't answer the question, they look like friggin' idiots. And so I think Ukraine is that leverage point. We'll see what Donald Trump ends up doing. But I don't think he's going to end up doing anything on behalf of Ukraine. And let's keep in mind, Russia has lost, it's worth remembering, 800,000 people to occupy 20% of Ukraine. We lost half of that in World War II and liberated a continent and took down an empire. Russia's not winning this war. And as anybody that knows anything about military tactics, the only thing a defending country has to do to win a war is defend. That's it. Defend long enough to wear out the enemy. That's exactly what's happening. Ukraine is winning, and Trump is about to throw them a lifeline. About to throw Russia a lifeline.
I know we got to let you go. I don't know if you have a couple minutes to stick around for Patreon members for some extra content. You're doing the content production now, so you know how important those folks are. If you're not watching on YouTube, please check us out on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. Let me ask you this final question, Adam, which I think is the one that you just teed up. You said, you know, defending is victory, right? And is that not what we have to do now? Do we have to not defend against Trump, just like the Ukrainians, and endure these attacks? I call it a great cultural, political, artistic, cultural depression, right? We're going through it, and we got to hang in there, and we got to get through it. So for the people who are feeling like they need a leader and are looking to you, the people who are in the trenches, who are sacrificing their butter and their beans and their freedoms, and they're worried about being deported or having their rights taken away, can you talk directly to them? Because they hear from leaders about, you know, how they can get through this and how they should get through this.
Listen, Paul and I, and some of you know people that, for instance, were parliamentarians in countries where parliamentarians regularly get assassinated, right? We always read the stories about heroes in history that, you know, either hid the Jews in World War II or did whatever. All these heroic stories. The reason they're stories and the reason they're heroic is because they're not easy. And we are now living in that time where things are going to be required of us that we will write stories and folklore about. That's this moment. Now, again, not everybody's capable and equipped for it. That's why people's names are in these stories, because there's so few of them. But this is our moment. This is the moment where you, honest to God, will look back in 5 years, no matter what happens in this country. You'll be proud of the fact that you stayed in the fight. And you'll also be proud to tell your kids or your grandkids you stayed in the fight. Now, maybe that's just tweeting on occasion. Maybe that's just keeping hope, right? Maybe you don't have a platform where you're doing a podcast or you're a former politician. That's okay. You do the best you can with what you have. Because the other thing I'll tell you is take the burden off your own shoulders. We all carry around this burden like it's all on us. It's not, right? We're a part of a team that's going to fight back. When you carry that burden, you eventually get worn out and you quit. Don't get worn out and quit. The other side loves the chaos. They feed on this. They're energized by this every day. You and I get exhausted by it. So do everything you can to keep from getting exhausted and stay in this fight, because if you back out, more people will, and then we'll lose. And you'll look back, truly, no hard work ever seems hard in the rearview mirror, right? I think back to Iraq and I'm like, oh, that was great. Yeah, that was pretty hard. You'll look back and be ashamed if you fell out of this. And so we need you. Stay in.
Thank you for that. Thank you for carrying the flag forward, for representing a positive image of American leadership for the world and for our kids. Thank you for showing your tattoo and juggling a little guy in the midst of all this. Folks, definitely follow Adam's Substack. Support everything he does. Check out his organization. Encourage him to declare his independence, like so many of us have. We're waiting for you, man. But until then, you're going to stick around for a couple quick fire questions. Thank you for all you do. And until next time, my friends, stay vigilant.